Good morning and welcome to the new episode of Dr. Lamba's Awakening Call. For quite some time, India has been experiencing a fundamental churn, and that churn is in the vision of itself. Nowadays, much attention has been devoted to Hindutva movement, which is a far broader cultural civilization revival. And incidentally, it doesn't coincide with the return of Modi as a Prime Minister. It coincides with the opening of the Indian economy post 1990. And its earliest manifestation was the creation of Swatantra Party in the times of Indira Gandhi. But this has remained under the radar. And the Hindu view of truth and its link to the governance is often ignored. There were two recent surveys, one by the World Value Survey of 2021, and the other was by Pew Center. These surveys were on religiosity of the world, and they contain three significant findings. One, India is an outlier among nations. That means the most significant exception to the global trend since 2007 of declining religiosity, that this country has not outlived its religiosity, and religiosity doesn't mean only adherence to the customary traditional values. Two, within India, the continued salience of a broad-based dharmic identity, there's a religious identity for at least 84% of citizens, Hindus, Sikhs, Buddhists and Jains. And thirdly, Indians across every religious group, whether they are Muslims or Christians or Hindus, etc., whatever their caste is, whatever their religion is, whatever their education is, from whichever part of the country they come, are unanimous in what they believe to be the major national problems. And these are unemployment, corruption, law and order, crime, and communal violence. Amazing that sense of unanimity in the problem shows the governance. So when people talk of governance, they think that it's only the law and order. It's not. As a matter of fact, you have got to understand the coincidence of the two observed phenomena. One is the revival of religiosity in large number of people in modern India. And the second is across the board agreement over specific governance issues. And that is after 3/4 of a century after independence. And it's a robust finding. They mirrored governance concerns that had been provoked and raised earlier and provoked the earlier 18th century dharmic civilization revival. It was during the Bengal Renaissance, which was in fact the germination period of the Indian independence movement, Raja Ram Mohan Rai and others, And if properly leveraged, this convergence, increased religiosity and across the board agreement on governance, promises both a much needed broad-based ethical revival and end to reactionary forces as well, the Hindutva forces. As a matter of fact, Hindutva is sowing the seeds of its own destruction by being reactionary and by asking for a revival of Hinduism, because the real Hinduism is much broader. The implication of this broader civilizational revival and the country's governance could potentially be momentous. Let's not deny that we believe in the civilizational essence of Hindu nationalism, which is captured in the understanding of truth and related notion of dharma. Now, dharma is not a cult, it's not religion per se. It is ethical values. And this concept of dharma has to be understood as a guide that drives human action at three levels. That's metaphysical, individual, and societal. So the quality of the governance must accordingly be judged in its ability to sustain conditions conducive to the observance of dharma at all levels. Now, the five main socio-cultural forces and political developments that have shaped the observance of dharma. I'm talking of dharma as, again, ethical base in modern Indian society. First was the revival of the Bengal Renaissance in the late 18th century, inspired later on independence movement, and it continued to the early 20th century. Second was as Nirad Chaudhary implemented a rejection of the old dharmic way of life, and that followed immediately India's independence, because there was emphasis on socialism, secularism, Soviet-style industrialization. Third is the reaction in the shape of Hindutva movement, which has evolved over the two phases, pre-independence, post-independence, resulting in coming of Modi. The fourth is a second revival that has occurred in two phases. First was the emergence of Swatantra Party, which I referred to earlier, and second is the new BJP government. But it also takes into consideration the fifth most important aspect. That's the resilience that underlies the highly decentralized nature of this real dharmic tradition, which people have not understood. Resilience and highly decentralized nature underlies and permeates the shape morality and ethics in India. Now, the principal source of modern Indian, as I said, was seen in the writings of Raja Ram Mohan Rai, carried forward by Tagore, Vivekananda, Aurobindo, Gandhi, Radhakrishnan, and Rajagopalacharya. They shared three common beliefs. Now, this is what Hindu concept is. First, Hindu society has suffered long enough a cultural moral debasement, even during the Hindu period. Casteism, untouchability, restrictions on women, on widows, superstition, fatalism. And fatalism is not a part of Hindu dynamics. Secondly, the ability of the Hindu society to govern itself would require broad-based social and moral regeneration. And third is the revival of Vedic, dharmic, philosophical and ethical rules, which are essential to such reform. Now that comes to the level, and then we have got to pay attention to the Hindu way of truth. Because what is that thing and what is Vedic? Truth encompasses all knowledge. It's not one. And the search for it is in fact the goal of life. Most importantly, can you believe all this talk of Vedic ignores the fact that the Vedas deny the knowledge of Brahma, which is all-encompassing expansive reality. And they say it's not exclusive to any authority, any person, any method. Indeed, they form the opposite. All ways of knowing are equally valid, and they affirm the capability of having a limited approach. Hence, we need to respect different perspectives, and that's why the word swadharma, self-truth, what is true to you may not be true to me. It changes according to time, according to circumstances, according to situations, according to the needs, according to the perception. So it has to be all-pervasive. As a matter of fact, Vedas are very clear, and they affirm that all ways of knowing are equally valid. They are capable of a valid but limited aspect of truth. So truth is never all-pervasive. It's limited to you. And for real Hinduism, its imperative for democracy stems from the fundamental philosophical moorings that must govern society. It provides a context for the individual's own pursuit of truth and for the government, which has to be guided by these concepts of the collective truth of all the people. And then karma has been misunderstood. Karma is not just what you do. Karma is ultimately action relating to our not relating, but reaching up to self-actualization, which in turn is required to follow your own dharma, svadharma, self-religion, own dharma, concept. And that reflects his or her svadharma nature. So it's through individual pursuit under the ultimate object of Lok Sangra. Lok Sangra is the universal welfare. So all these perceptions of the individuals combined together, and then what else is government? After all, the parliament is a combination of different values. So when a consensus is arrived, that is what society is. Now this complex and many-sided Hindu view of truth means that the legitimacy of the government cannot be found on any one truth. It rests on the government's ability to enable and empower individuals and their different constituents. And they are to follow their own dharma. But one's Swadharma does not in fact overpower the others. If you look at the Arthashastra, the minimum level of material well-being is the responsibility of the government. And the ruler's first responsibility is the welfare of the people and ensuring that all the three economic sectors, agriculture, industry and trade, function smoothly without hindrance, and it also implies maintenance of law and order, preservation of individual property rights, as well as trust, that's enforcement of contracts. And that's what the modern economy is. Law and order, preservation of the individual property and life. Now, crucial to the Hindu perspective does not admit of any monopoly of truth, least of all any claim of such a monopoly by the government. And this was the perspective, the polycentric nature of truth. That is Hindu, polycentric. And then the consensus of those polycentric truths. And this informed the first revival, but then it was rejected. It was only a matter of time that this rejection provoked a reaction. If this had been taken care of right in 1947, possibly the Hindutva's virulent form would not have been seen today. And Hindutva is a politico-cultural reaction to the post-independent secularism. The reaction has tended to be superficial, let's be very clear, and focusing on beef eating and co-slaughter and extreme lynching are not a part of the Hindu concept. As a matter of beef eating, even the Brahmins in Kashmir and Kerala eat beef. So at the same time, the abnormal state of party politics in the country has been weakened. And the reactionary forces, which have their own agenda, but they have nothing to do with the Hindu view of truth, which is polycentric, which is individualistic, but at the same time not overweeningly superimposing. So if upheld, this understanding of the Hindu view of truth promises return to a governance model. And that governance model is rooted in Hindu civilizational values, but yet preserves the best aspects that have come from the West, such as the separation of the state and religion. And this balance would strive to restore within the 21st century polity, economy and society and order that promotes the attainment of dharma, again not religion. Dharma is, as I said, ethical values as per your perceptions for all Indian citizens. And this concept of polycentric, svadharma, self-truth, informs the government about least interference but maximum material help, leading to self-actualization at the individual level and then at the national level. As a matter of fact, this concept can be upgraded at the global level as well. And that's why there is a protest whenever any country wishes to impose its own values. For example, when USA says, well, everybody should be democracy, and in their concept of democracy, that's not done. Every country has its own values, as every individual has its own values, and the whole thing should be considered that way. If you do it that way, that will be a new era of ethical values and material well-being. There is no disconnect between the two. They inform each other, they reinforce each other. And the truth is not static. Justin Pilate said, what is asked, what is truth, and would not stay for the answer. But here, in Hindu view, it stays for the answer. It says what you think to be proper. What is right changes according to the time, according to the perception, according to the need. For example, I'll tell you, in some tribes in Northeast, until a girl gets pregnant before marriage, she can't be married. And that was because they wanted women to be fertile. They wanted monogamy, and then they wanted to be sure that the girl is able to bear a child, because their population was 20. Now, anywhere else in India, a pregnant girl would be rejected out of hand by the parents. So it changes according to the need. What is truth there would not be truth anywhere. Befitting as they refer to. It's not reality that Hinduism objects to befitting. No. So the whole thing has to be seen as an individualistic freedom in the welfare of the nation or of the cosmos as a whole. And that permeates Hindu concept of truth as well as the art of governance. Thank you.